Thanks very much. We'll click the continue button if we're happy to be recording. So yeah, let's get started. It's a couple of minutes past 1. I'm really happy to be presenting this workshop today with Sharon and Christine and Amanda. It was a great idea of Sharon's that we were talking about last year. That's something that's often going kind of a bit hidden, or is a bit more individual thing when people are thinking about going for awards or prizes. And we decided, let's bring this a bit more out into the open and have some discussion together, particularly with some presenters who have been successful in this space and successful in encouraging others in this space. So the idea of today's workshop is to kind of acquaint you with some of the opportunities, to give some insider tips and experiences from our presenters, and generally just to be able to help to develop your awareness about some of the good reasons why you should be thinking about prizes and awards, and some of the processes that are involved in actually applying. So I'll do a kind of quick intro, and then we'll invite Amanda and Christine, who are going to talk about their own experiences in this particular space, building profile and applying for particular scholarships. And again, hooray, we can finally talk publicly about Chris's Fulbright, which I'm sure she'll tell you more about. And then Sharon's going to tell you some information about where you can learn about the prizes and awards. And I wonder whether anybody knows or has looked at that calendar of awards on our faculty intranet page. It's a very lovely calendar with interactive clicking ability on it. And so if you haven't known about that already, that's something that you'll learn about today. Again, as we go through, just the usual routine, if you'd like to pose a question for somebody, please put it into the chat and we can address it, because the idea is that we can respond to people as we go. And also, of course, there's the opportunity to look at the recording, and questions that you have for each of us, then we could also be willing to follow up afterwards. So let me get started with the couple of slides that I have. In the incredibly busy life that we all have, why would you add writing an application for award on top of that kind of activities? So, it does require you to not only put effort into putting together an application, sometimes it also means you have to go seek out people who will be able to provide testimonials for you, and maybe it's students or other academics that requires their time. And some of us can be reluctant to do that, and that's understandable. However, there are important reasons why you might consider going for particular prizes or awards. One thing, it's good to have recognition by your community, and that community can be a quite small community, maybe a discipline-based community, or it could be a much larger community, for example, thinking about in my area across all of teacher education. So it's some way of making visible the kind of contribution that you have made to that community. It can also be extremely helpful when you are going for grants, whether it's internal grants or external grants. And there's usually some kind of selection process where, how do you distinguish yourself from others in an application? You might have publications the same as other people have publications. You might have done the same sort of things as other people have done, but fewer people win prizes and awards. So it gives you some kind of a marker or a badge that says you've been externally recognised in some way as having achieved something by your community. And remember, there's all kinds of different prizes and awards. It might be in an early career stage, it might be a mid or senior career stage, it might be for something related to a paper that you've written or a contribution that you've made to a particular community. So the various ways in which the sorts of things that you do can be made visible, and also can go towards marking you as somebody a little bit different from others in an application, can be really, really important. So there's only a limited number of winners, of course, in any kind of application process. So what else is in it for you if you decide to put together the time in an application? So the third point that I've got there is about the professional development process that can happen for you as a consequence of actually putting together the ideas to make an application. And in that process, you're kind of doing an audit of your skills and capabilities. How does it fit the particular application scheme? And in that way, it can help you to be able to see, oh, maybe there's particular gaps in what I have to offer. There's areas that I can work on. Oh, here's maybe a strength that I have that I haven't actually been emphasizing terribly much in the other kind of work that I'm doing. So again, it's like a promotion application or a probation application. You are helped to sort of sift through the work that you're doing, and to be able to think about ways in which you can like accentuate the strengths or identify the particular gaps. And also might help you to think about, well, what are my networks and how am I networking myself, and where do I need to become more visible if I want to apply for a particular award? What kind of communities am I a part of at the moment, and where might I direct my interests? So you can also think about over a period of time, if you're writing these applications, you probably come up with some kind of skeleton, and maybe Chris or Amanda might talk about that. You know, if you're applying for awards, then you have a kind of basic statement that you can start to tailor for different things, so that you don't have to write from scratch every time about an application, and you can just sort of tailor or shift it to whatever particular agency that you might be aiming towards. So on my next slide, there we have, and just while Sharon's changing that, it's also really helpful to have a look at past examples. So we hold some examples in the research office. Sometimes if you're looking for particular funders, they have examples of successful applications. So just analysing those, looking for the kinds of interesting ways in which people present themselves, if that's available for you to see, can be really, really helpful. So in terms of planning your approach, so often I hear, and probably more from women than from men, it's just me and my work, or it's my team, it's not just me. But I'm just inviting you to be bold in this space. Just go ahead and have a go. Like, think about this as an opportunity for your development, not necessarily that you're showing off, but, you know, just have the confidence to be able to step forward and say, well, I'm doing some work and this could be recognised in the form of some kind of an award. At the same time, I think you need to have a balance between an honest appraisal of your work. If it's an early career award and you're in the early career phase, this is highly appropriate, obviously. So is this the right time for you to be going for it? Even within that time, maybe you can only have one go at a particular award, and you have to decide strategically, is this the right time for me to be going for this thing? What do I have in my background that helps me to be able to think that I'm the right person and this is the right time? We can do a lot more, I think, for supporting each other. Again, I like the idea of this workshop because we're bringing this conversation out into the open. And I think we also need to do that with our colleagues. Amanda might talk a little bit about this too, in terms of nominating each other. You know, I think it would be great if you went for an award. We can say that to our colleagues, what we know about each other, and encourage them to be able to go for these opportunities. We can read each other's applications. We can think about the networks that could be created for each other through being able to put together something like a prize or an award application. So just in terms of the very explicit and obvious ways that we support each other, I think that's great. It's not just you individually, but it's you thinking about other people. And they could be PhD students, for example, coming up for a potential award. You know, having these kinds of, as I said before, having these kinds of markers can really help people in their careers. So look up, look down, look sideways in terms of the kinds of people who might be eligible and how we can encourage each other. And finally, it's not just kind of shooting in the wind, like going for everything and every available opportunity. Sometimes that can actually be to your disadvantage. But think strategically, what have I got to claim? How does that meet what the prize giver or the funder might be after? And how can I tailor my approach well? So have I actually got something to shout about, or am I just shouting? And that also helps you to think about, you know, where might I need to be more visible that I'm not visible now, and think strategically about how you could plan to go for particular awards or prizes. So in this kind of highly hyper competitive world, you might say, there's not going to be lots of winners. Obviously, that's the point of a competition. But I guess what I'm advocating is that there are particular moments that can be good for you to be thinking about these kinds of opportunities for yourself and for others. And also thinking about how just the process of working through these kinds of applications can also support you in your own kind of research and career appraisal. So like our other experiences that we regularly have in academia, there's a bit of thick-skinnedness involved. You will get rejected, most likely more often than you get accepted, perhaps even more so than we experience in our publishing world, because then you get, hopefully a chance to be able to revise and resubmit. So again, also supporting each other in the probably likely event that we're not successful, but also making some celebrations really obvious too when we are successful. So that's all from me now. And now I'm happy to shift over to our first speaker, Amanda. And Amanda, just to give a little intro, is the recipient of multiple awards. Amanda, I think, was trying to hide her light under a bushel yesterday when we were speaking about this. And she also has an important role in double ARE, in terms of the awards that are offered by that organisation. But just a few of Amanda's awards: the double ARE Postgraduate Research Award, the Brian Corwell Research Award, the Emerging Scholar Award for the International Journal of Leadership in Education, a Hedley Beer Award for educational writing around her book. So I don't think there's any reason, Amanda, for you to be shy about your position of talking about today. And so I'll invite you now to say some words about perhaps your motivation for applying for different awards, what it's been like for you, and perhaps some words of advice for others too. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks so much, Mandy. I thought I would just start out by sort of saying why I even went for an award in the first place. And that was that I was a PhD student at a workshop that was being led by someone who had just recently won the AARE Early Career Researcher Award. And he told us all to just start applying for paper awards for conferences, because so few people actually do it, that it's pretty, you have a pretty good shot of at least being kind of in contention for it. So there was about 10 of us sitting at the table that were going to the AARE conference, and we all thought, all right, well, let's just write a paper and stick it in and see how we go. And that actually was the year that, so I was one of 5 people who won the Postgraduate Researcher Award, and David Bright won one the same year as well. So that was the first time that we actually met each other. So it can actually kind of, find a nice way to establish, new networks with people or new friendships with people as well. And I think that advice was kind of half joking, that you can probably have a pretty good chance of winning if you put it in. But we got some other, interesting pieces of advice, some of which Mandy has already said so far, but it's a really useful way of getting the people you want to read your work to actually hear about your work, notice your work, and sort of feel like there's a reason to read it. And as Mandy said, everything's so hyper competitive at the moment, and it's a way to just kind of, establish that you exist in a really, really busy space sometimes. So I was just going to talk a little bit about kind of the difference between awards that are self-nominated versus other people nominating for you, because that's quite a stark difference at times. And then also talk about the way, as you can see on the screen, that it's helped me to kind of build my narrative about myself as a researcher, which is now becoming really important as I move through processes of applying for different grants and things like that. So the first couple of awards that Mandy read out were self-nominated. So I did put myself in for the paper award for AARE, and I would really encourage anyone who is in the right kind of capacity, early career stuff, or if you have postgrad students, to talk about that as well with them. But I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. anyway, so yeah, they were kind of that one and the International Journal of Leadership in Education are awards that you submit some writing for, a full paper for, and they go through a kind of judging panel based on really explicit criteria. And so I figured I was going to be writing a paper anyway, so I may as well stick it in for the award. The IJLE one was actually wonderful because they funded me to go to AERA for the first time. So it, like, some of them are just going to give you a certificate, but some of them are actually really valuable opportunities to be able to do something that you might not otherwise be able to do. And when I was there, I got to go and meet the editorial board of the journal and have a sort of celebratory breakfast with them. So that also then allowed me to meet some new people who I might not otherwise have gotten in a room with as well for, you know, at that stage of my career. And then somehow the last couple of awards were nominated by other people. I still don't know who nominated me for one of them. And I think that's a kind of tricky thing to talk about, because I wanted to sort of say, you know, there's a lot of back channel conversations of, as Mandy said, you can encourage people to nominate you for something, or you might encourage someone to let you nominate them for something, but sometimes it will just come out of the blue. And I think that was a really, really nice moment for me when I found out I won the Brian Caldwell Research Award, because it was just completely unexpected and something that was, you know, quite meaningful because of that. But I think one thing that you can do that's really strategic is start to think about what awards are actually available to you that you might not have thought about before. So, for example, the ones that I won have often been from the Australian Council of Educational Leaders, which is a really logical place because I'm an educational leadership researcher. They are really... they invest a lot in trying to bring academics into the mix and to try to connect academics with practitioners. And so they place a lot of value on those kind of moments of connection between award winners and the principals at their conferences and things like that. There will be also associations like AARE that have conferences that will then have conference paper awards, but you might have other associations that fit really well with your particular research area. I know there's a lot of opportunities for the conference that's around using technology in education. They have a huge number of different awards, including SIG awards and best paper awards for all different levels. So just looking at the people in this room, I think there's quite a few people that would really apply for. So I'm happy to give you a hint about, you know, different places you might look at for that as well afterwards. But I think one of the really critical things is around nominating other people as well. So we often do work that's very unsung. You know, we know what our close colleagues are doing and we know how brilliant it is, but there's not often a chance for people to really talk about themselves publicly. And like, it took a lot of deliberating for me to actually agree to do this, because I just thought, well, no one wants to hear from me about this. And that's kind of the mentality I think that a lot of people have. Like, we do this really difficult work and we never kind of want to talk about it. So sometimes I find pushing other people by nominating them to do things or for things is a really beneficial way of showing them that their work is important and valued, and it's something that they might not want to do for themselves. I think there's a lot of benefits to the self-nomination stuff though, because as Mandy said, it kind of forces you to really assess your own work with a critical eye. It really requires you to think deeply about where your work is positioned and also where you want to be positioned as an academic. Once you start writing things like rote statements and trying to have to actually, for ARCs, having to explain why you are a high-performing academic, or, you know, why you are the person that should be given this grant at this time, the kind of arguments that you have to make will be quite consistent. As Mandy said, you kind of have a statement that you then can tweak and reuse again and again, but being able to say, you know, my work was recognised as being important for connecting with practitioners, or my work has been recognised as being really theoretically innovative or making a significant contribution to our understanding of a particular issue or circumstance or whatever, it just gives you a little bit more of a thing to hang your hat on, which it's being recorded now, but I put in for a DECRA last year, and I was able to really talk about the fact that I was, I had been moving the field forward in these ways, as was evidenced by the fact that, I had won a particular award. And we don't know if that was successful or not. So I'm not going to say that that's a strategy that you should definitely use. But yes, so I think it's really, really helpful for you to think about your own work, to think about your own narrative and shape yourself as an academic whose work is relevant or important or, theoretically sound, or whatever it is that you want to be able to say. And so, as Mandy said, then being strategic about the kinds of awards you would go for. If you want to be the person that connects with industry, then you're probably going to go for awards that represent recognition from practitioners. If you want to be the person that is, doing amazing conceptual work, then you probably would want to go for a conference paper award or something similar. I think the other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on was that it helps you to really become part of a specific community. And so AARE, I know, for example, is one that they love when people come back again and again. So I won that postgraduate award, and then when I became the early career representative, the people on the executive were like, we knew you because we knew your name because you had won that award. And they kind of feel like they're bringing people into the fold when they recognize them in that way. And I know there's people in this, like Melissa has also won a AARE paper award as well. And so she might have some experiences to share with us later on as well. But yeah, so it's a nice way of kind of finding your people and finding your space within a really, as I said before, busy and noisy kind of landscape of academics doing that work. So I suppose that's really it. Like, people who I really wanted to read my work paid attention to it because of that first postgraduate student researcher award. Like, Bob Lingard came up to me at the airport and said, I read your paper that you won the award for. And that was like the best day of my academic life at the beginning, because he is so important in my area. And so the last thing that I just wanted to talk about was to really encourage people. If you don't know, I'm the conference chair for AARE this year, for the last year, and we are very much encouraging people to put in for the various range of awards that are available. We have the Postgraduate Researcher Award, we have the Early Career Researcher Award, we have specific awards for Indigenous postgraduate students and also early career researchers. There's also the doctoral awards, which some of you might consider for your students. One person can be nominated by each university, so that's probably something that would have to be discussed with the research office, but that's a really prestigious award that George Varian actually got an honourable mention for not last year, the year before. So there's lots of different opportunities within a conference that will, I suppose, just do all the things that we've talked about, giving you a chance to stand up there and people to see you and to know, who you are and the type of work that you do. So I think that's all I wanted to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have as well.
That's great, Amanda. Thank you so much. And I like the way that you also are highlighting how it can help you to become part of a community. It's not just about shining a light on you, but it's actually helping that sense of belonging and networking. And I also really liked that idea, like, let's just normalize this process. This is not just something, special and unique. This could be part of the everyday stuff that we do ourselves and with others. And so related to that, what helped you to feel confident enough to be able to, in the beginning, put in an application or to continue to do that? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. It was just, I have really, really good mentors who are staunch in their support of the people that they work with. So the first time around was my PhD supervisors. And actually, I should also say, Jane Wilkinson was one of the judges of that paper. And so I got you know, as a little baby PhD student, I got a little handwritten note from Jane Wilkinson telling me that she liked my paper, and that was the best, you know, it was so lovely. And I think that also helped then bring me to Monash in the end as well. So, but yeah, it's very much about having champions, you know, in your corner who we all probably have those moments. I shouldn't say we all, but certainly I have those moments of imposter syndrome or whatever, where I think I don't really think I should go for this. And there's always, you know, the person that says, yes, do it, because what's the worst that can happen? You can, you know, you won't get it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Okay. So now please feel free to put comments, questions into the chat box as we go along. And we'll now invite our second speaker, Chris Grove, to talk about her experiences. And Christine, as I mentioned at the beginning, is just like Amanda, a multi-award winner. And one award is the Australian Teacher Educators Association Early Career Researcher Award, but the award that I'm most excited to be able to talk about today, because it's been under wraps for months and it must have been frustrating Christine terribly, I imagine, is that we can now announce that she is our Fulbright Scholarship winner, which is fantastic. And I'm pretty sure a first for the faculty, and you can talk a little bit about it, but it's a very prestigious program which enables cultural exchange at a US university, and fingers crossed about the travel, that's what we're hoping. A very rigorous selection process that involves both the written applications and interview process by, you know, including government officials, academics, etc. So welcome, Christine, and thanks very much. And I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Big shoes to follow after Amanda, but I'll absolutely try my best. I might start off with sort of talking a little bit about what it is and then why I even applied and how I heard about it. So Mandy gave a good overview, I think, you know, really, really well. Really, it's a cultural exchange between two countries, and the main purpose of the Fulbright is an exchange of ideas and knowledge to better communities or society around a particular topic or area. And so to be fair, when I was looking at the Fulbright opportunity, there is no way I thought I would ever be in a situation to even talk about it right now and to be able to share information about applying. So a big part of this journey is also sharing, you know, that experience too, so others can also put their hand up as well and apply, even if you think you might not apply at all. Actually, I was saying to Mandy and Sharon that a lot of people have who are at the orientation never thought that they would have received this award. And so everyone, you know, doesn't believe that they would be at the table and contributing to their field in the way that the Fulbright scholarship allows you to do that. So I applied because I was actually at a very interesting sort of stage in my career, moving out of being an early career researcher. I think I have one more round of the DECRA to go because of the extension of COVID-19. And I was unsuccessful in the DECRA and unsuccessful in 2 faculty leadership positions. And I really thought, you know, what can I do to support the field of youth mental health and wellbeing and psychology? This is a great area of passion. And for me, I always, you know, want to at least one day or eventually go back to working in the school system again from when I was, you know, did my training back in the day and did my registrar program through working in schools. And so I thought, you know, what will support this research work? What funding is there outside of the DECRA, outside of in-house faculty work that would support youth mental health and wellbeing in the way that my research vision and theme is sort of leading me to do based on the practical skills that I've learned from being a school psychologist. And so I actually turned to a few mentors in other fields who had applied for things like the Churchill and a Fulbright, you know, fellowship. And I looked into, you know, what did they do on theirs? You know, what was their inspiration to even apply and go and commit to such a big, you know, big scholarship and award? And they really did some interesting projects around their vision and their research agenda. And they were really sort of talking about innovative ways to address some of the challenges that they see in the field. And I thought, oh, well, if they're going to fund, you know, these really interesting, you know, knowledge exchanges, absolutely, maybe I should just throw my hat in the ring. So I didn't attend any of the orientations. I only attended one alumni panel. And I thought, let me see, you know, the kinds of people who are winning these sorts of awards. And they're all three were the most down-to-earth people I could have ever even met or seen. And they talked about this absolute undying passion for the field, and that's what's drawing them to apply. And so I thought, well, actually, that's, you know, reason why I would even think about applying for this quite specifically. And so really, you know, with the Fulbright, they do it a lot on merit-based work. So what is your academic history and your professional history, and how feasible is your program that you want to do in, you know, another country, really, and in that exchange that you'll be doing when you do go overseas. So they fund quite a lot. They fund your airfares, they fund for your spouse to go, or partner to go with you, and if you have children or dependents, your accommodation. They cover a lot for a period of time that you might want to undertake in that specific project. I will let you know, they do not hand out examples. You can't get a Fulbright example unless another Fulbrighter shares that with you. And I say that to you because, of course, I remember being like, oh, I'll just, you know, see if I can have a look at one. That's what you do with the DECRA. You know, there's such a strict template. There's, you know, certain language that you use, how you shape it, how you write it, is very, very structured. And so the one thing that they did say in the alumni panel was, just be yourself. There is not one way you can fill in a Fulbright application. And I was thinking, well, that's a bit rich. Like, how can you just be yourself in, you know, an application like this? And so I just started writing my, you know, vision for my research theme. What do I want to do in the next 5 years? Is it still working back in a school as a school psychologist, or is it trying to change policy that impacts schools directly and practices directly, so we can change some of the systems around youth mental health and well-being? And so the other area that really drew me to this particular type of fellowship were the ambassadorial skills as well. So they wanted to have people who were great researchers, but also ethical, or they were able to do collaborations across countries and be an ambassador for Australia. And so that really, you know, drew, and exchanging ideas is a really big one. So that really drew me to applying. Timing of my application really took probably about a year, I'd say. I flagged it with the faculty that I was applying maybe 6 months before, once I developed the program and research vision with a collaborator in the States who I've worked with for a few years already. And then I started, you know, putting that work together. The hardest bit, and this is hard for Australians, is the impact statement. So a big part of them knowing, you know, who you are and your story and why you're doing what you're doing and why you're the right person to be doing this field or this work, is to write about, you know, who you are personally, and a bit of your story as well. So who you are, what's brought you here, and is there anything in your life that's impacted you too, positively or negatively, that's built your character. That took me, I think, 3 or 4 goes to write that. And that was probably, they weight that really high in the Fulbright application, almost equal to your project as well. So just flagging that does take a lot of time. Another part of the application was I didn't actually send out my full 81-page application out to anyone to read. And that was intentional. I think Mandy just read my project, you know, to make sure the faculty would even support me if this was successful. I don't think it was going to be. I'll tell you, you know, I'll be honest, I don't think it was, but to make sure that it is aligned to our faculty goals as well. And it also advocates for Monash education as well. But no one read it. And for me, that was really important, to have a voice and to be, you know, a true leader in youth mental health and wellbeing going forward, and to have confidence in my writing, in my language, and being able to stand, you know, next to this project as well. So that was, you know, intentional, but I did have a lot of support, you know, informal support of mentors around me, encouraging this process and to go for something like this as well. So having a clear leadership vision, I think, is important, and theme. I will say the interview is brutal. I had a vice chancellor on my panel, and they ask you the most incredible questions that you couldn't even prepare for. And so that was, you know, the biggest probably for me after the personal impact statement, the most nervy to go through. It was during the second lockdown last year when we were in Melbourne and I was moving house. And so you can just imagine trying to prepare for that. You know, it definitely has its own challenges. I intentionally didn't Google how to win a Fulbright. I intentionally didn't ask, what kind of questions will I be asked in the interview process. I really wanted to not be distracted by, other approaches around or other ways of, applying for a Fulbright, because they genuinely mean there's not one way to apply and one way to do your interview and to show your record and your passion for the field. So, I really took that to the nth degree. And after the interview, I did think, why didn't I over prepare? Why didn't I, write 10 questions I could get asked and, pre-plan my responses? And so I did go down a rabbit hole and I found all these videos about people giving advice and tips. And my partner, Andrew, he just said, I think, let's go get dinner and get out of the house, because you could really, read a lot of things online about how to do this process. But, looking back at after the interview, I thought, well, I wish I did do over prepare and over planning, but actually, if I did that, I think it would have put me on a different vision for this project and this work and this collaboration. And I didn't want that to be, in this specific journey. I just wanted to also flag that it's very sort of flexible in the Fulbrighter community. So once you're in the community around it, with your work is incredible. And they sort of say, once you're a Fulbrighter, you're a Fulbrighter for life. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I haven't seen anything that I can report on yet, but a lot of people have said it's great for your career and really putting a spotlight on issues that you might be really passionate about as well. So I look forward to maybe 6 months from now being able to talk about hopefully some opportunities that have come around youth mental health and wellbeing and inclusion in particular, that hopefully this Fulbright's been able to put a spotlight on for that specific space. But otherwise, I think that's it. I would have never applied. So I encourage, if anyone's on the fence, do apply. And I absolutely am happy to support applications or talk through anything related to applying for a Fulbright as well. Sharing applications is tricky. My suggestion would be to write yours and follow their guidelines. They do give you guidelines, and be authentic in that journey and seek informal mentoring support for your Fulbright. That's quite different to what Monash Research Office says. They actually recommend that you get as many professors to read it as possible, but after getting burnt through the DECRA process, I think I really wanted to try and set my project apart from maybe some of the other applicants that were applying as well. I think that's all, Mandy, from me.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. And it's really nice to hear about your personal experience for this. I mean, because you can set up templates and how-to guides and all of that, but clearly, your journey has been an important one in terms of the authenticity of what you're doing and the meaningfulness for yourself. So it's really great to have those kinds of insights that you can offer in this, incredible experience, and also about the amount of time taken in order to prepare for something like this. It's not just something a couple of weeks beforehand, the deadline's coming up, better put in your Fulbright. So, careful planning is obviously really important. Do you want to just say something about the project that you're planning and where you're planning to do it? Is that possible to talk about?
Oh, yeah,
because it's obviously, you've got to choose somewhere that is in the US that obviously is going to further your career, isn't it? I mean, that's the whole point of being able to do this work.
Absolutely. So we knew since December. I think I let Viv and Mandy know. And so it's been a really long time keeping it under wraps. But to be fair, we've all been so busy with teaching and COVID that it's, I've been doing lots of different things. In terms of the project, we are looking at a specific youth mental health literacy and action program across the states that's currently running through the government schools. And we're looking to adapt that to a digital form using some of the chatbot and AI work that I've been doing, as well as making sure that there are cultural elements to the intervention and support for young people that cater to the Australian background and are basically our rural, regional and remote areas in Australia as well. But the Fulbright's really interesting. Your project can adapt as well. So you have so it's quite flexible in saying that. So you might have, for example, me doing this specific project, but as part of it, they actually encourage you to connect with other universities as well while you're there. And so we'll be connecting with a few unis that are doing some great stuff around youth emotional regulation. Yale have a brilliant program around youth emotional regulation and what they're doing in the space there. So I've been in contact with them, and so I'll be going there and doing a presentation and learning about their programs. Stanford have a brilliant youth mental health program there and clinic that they run through the university. And so I'll be going there to learn a bit about that and then bringing that knowledge from those campuses, supported by the Fulbright, into what I bring back to Australia after the visit. How to select your host institution in the States, that is a big question, and it's different for everyone's topic and area. Lots of people do cold email. Scholars over in the States who are in their area and reputable and well known for their research lab or their ideas. A lot of people suggest writing in your subject heading Fulbright application, and then getting support from that host institution to host you for a period of time to do some of that research. A lot of Americans who come to Australia also cold email professors here to support them to come and do sort of a research exchange. And so it is really common to cold email scholars as well. But for mine, we've actually been working for a couple of years together already. And that's not a feature. You don't have to have a prior collaboration to apply for a Fulbright. But this actual Fulbright will be my mentor, Joanne. Professor Joanne is retiring during this period that I'll be there and handing over her last 10 years, so a decade of intervention-based research through the Fulbright program. And so this will sort of kick off that, handing over of this intervention-based research, and then starting, the next phase, moving it into the digital space. And so that was quite a unique part of the Fulbright sort of write-up that I discussed in my program about actually, this is incredible that she's even willing to hand over all this research, sort of handing over the baton, and that I felt very privileged and fortunate to be able to, take that on for the field and the profession to move it forward.
So it sounds like it was really timely in terms of the planning for this with researchers in the US too. So that I imagine could be quite helpful. Yeah, and I must admit, having been cold called by a couple of people about potential Fulbright projects, and because I didn't know them and I didn't really know their work, I was not so enthusiastic about it. So I might be very different from the average person, but I think having those kinds of connections or people knowing about you, I think could be helpful in terms of them reading on in an email too. That's sometimes you could be lucky with a cold call, but it's great that you talked about the range of ways in which people can make that kind of contact.
You definitely, Mandy, I mean, they definitely should at least have read your work or cited your work heavily in their work. They would, it's not, when I say cold, it's, you don't email each other.
Freezing.
Yeah, like freezing. So they might actually cite your work and you've read maybe one of their papers. So there is some kind of small connection in your areas, definitely. And the timing's important. So a lot of people say it takes 2 years to prepare to apply for a Fulbright, just to get your project, ready and organized, your host institution ready as well to be able to apply.
Oh, that's great. And if you look at the Fulbright webpage, which people might be inspired to do, hopefully after we've had this session, you can see across the career span, there are opportunities too. So this is, for people at all ranges of experience in academia, different kinds of awards too, I might say. Yeah. So thank you so much, Christine. That is just great. Again, please feel free to put in comments and questions into the chat or to follow up with Christine or Amanda or any of us afterwards. And now I'm going to turn over to Sharon, because now that we've whet your appetite and from these great presentations, here's some opportunities for you to think about that Sharon's going to talk about now. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine and Amanda, for sharing your inspiring journey. And I hope by sharing your story, it's made others feel that this is something that they can do. It's not something that we talk about a lot, and it's certainly something that we want to support you in doing more of. So in terms of where to look for particular awards to apply for, Amanda obviously touched upon, looking at associations and that sort of thing that are relevant to your field. But if you want to have sort of a more broad search for where to apply for awards, Research Professional has the search function. They're looking for awards that would be both within Australia and internationally. And the Faculty Research Office has actually put together a list of all awards that are relevant to our field. And that's actually available on the intranet, which you may or may not be aware of. We put this list together about a year ago and had intended to plug it quite a bit last year, but COVID sort of got in the way of that. And I will share this link with you afterwards so that you can have a look at the list. And basically it's interactive and it connects back to Research Professional, so you can have a look at the guidelines and go into more details. The other way of looking at opportunities more broadly is the MRO also sends out opportunities from time to time that we will also circulate to you all. And in terms of support in actually applying, in the same way that we support you in applying for grant applications, our office will have a look at your application and review it against the criteria and offer any suggestions from that sort of perspective when applying. So I encourage you all to have a look at the intranet, which I will send around the details for after the session. And if you've got any questions or you want to go into more details about any of these opportunities, then I'm more than happy to have a chat with you at any time. So yeah, if we do have any questions, we can probably take those now.
Great. So that's, I mean, yeah, when you scroll down on that calendar, so it gives you, I think, as Sharon mentioned, the timing of those awards, and you can just click on and see more about them, which is great. And then also, as Amanda mentioned, think about the own communities that you're working in, the journals that you are writing for. Do they have awards? Some do, some don't. Some associations do, some don't. But, talk to the people who are in your own networks about what kind of opportunities are offered in this respect, because that there's more than you imagine. There's a lot more than you imagine. And also, as Amanda pointed out, there may be multiple awards given, but also, some awards people just don't apply for. Whereas on the other hand, you have lots and lots of people applying for, like, I don't know, the Division K Teacher and Teaching Award at AERA. So that's a huge pool compared to some others. But so there's lots of opportunities, some if they're honourable mentions, and they don't always have to be for excellence. So think about the opportunities for positioning that these offer as well.
Can I also just say, Mandy, the problem with creating a calendar, and I've put this in the chat, is that you then need to keep that calendar up to date. But generally, most of these awards are offered at the same time each year. So just if you click on the link in anything that interests you in the calendar we've created, it takes you to the current information on that award. So roughly, they're usually always round about the same time. So don't stress too much about the fact that they might look like they're out of date on the calendar. We'll endeavour to update that.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point, Trudy. I had forgotten that too. And that is quite a bit of work from the research office to be putting that together. But yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, we might look at ways where we take out year references and just give rough.
Yeah, like month or something. Yeah. No, that's great. I think we've impressed everybody so much that we're all speechless. Or maybe you're so busy, you're all off now investigating websites where you can start to put together applications. We'll just give another moment. I don't know, Chris or Amanda, if there's any other comments, or Sharon, that you'd like to make just as we're finishing up.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, great.
So thanks so much. Like this is really inspiring. And yes, we are Googling for awards and so on, Mandy, as we speak. Just a quick one. I get a lot of emails about leadership type, I don't know whether they're awards or grants. And I wondered if leadership is not my area of research. However, how good would that be on a CV line or for my trajectory, research trajectory, having an award, which is something like a leadership, so like an aspiring leader, an early career researcher, being a leader, so taking up leadership positions. However, the trajectory is meant to support my research trajectory. I'm not sure if I'm making sense here, but for
I wonder
example,
if
it
there's
might
something
be,
like Amanda talked about a little bit, going for the things that are suitable for you. Do you want to say something, Amanda?
Yeah, I think what I've learnt in the last couple of years of going for ARCs is that your narrative has to be really tight, and so like the award has to be able to be woven into that narrative really clearly. Like, it's great that you've got it and it'll go on your CV, but if it doesn't actually support the kind of way you're trying to position yourself and the field that you're positioning yourself into, I'm not sure that it's entirely worth the time and energy to do it. Yeah, I think you would potentially be better off just putting in more energy into the right, place to support what you're trying to do, if that makes sense.
yep. So the best place might be look at research professional and so on, which is more viable for us to talk in our ropes and so on for a research type grant or an award.
I think so, yeah. And like the conference I was thinking about was actually, I was thinking about you, Sarika, with your work with robotics and stuff, that iSight conference or SITE conference. They've got so many different awards that you could potentially be really competitive for with the work that you do. So that, yeah, I think being really strategic is really, really important.
Mm.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thanks.
I was going to say, but I'm also like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Mandy might have a complete.
Stop, you're not supposed to say that bit. No, but I totally agree. I think what you've just offered, and that's why I think I was referring to what you had mentioned also in your talk. It is important to be thinking about where you're positioning yourself. And I really liked what Christine said about what can I do to support the field. This is what I'm doing, and this is how I want to be noticed in my field. So what is your field, and where do you want to be noticed? You have to be really careful not to kind of shoot all over the place and just decide where your aim is going to go.
I also think it's easier to do it when it's in your field and you're not having to kind of do mental gymnastics to work out how you fit within a criteria or whatever as well. So it's about saving yourself that stress.
Yeah, and it often comes across pretty quickly to the people who are reading the application too. So that's important. Great. Well, any other questions? Sue's put something in the chat. Sue, do you want to talk about it with us? Oh, it's like how do I do this with all of the other work that I'm doing? Is that basically the message there?
It's kind of around, I don't know if you can even see me properly, but anyway, kind of around the, if I stretch myself too thin, I feel like I'm doing everything poorly. And while it's great to have valuable feedback, which some of, like, you don't even know whether they're going to give you feedback or whether they just go, sorry, we gave it to someone else. I've got this great opportunity, and it's an honor to even have someone approach me and say, I want to nominate you for this award. But I read the fine print, and I have to mentor them in writing the application, which is a great thing to do, but now is just the wrong time for me. So, I mean, do I just say to them, look, let's do it next year? Or, it's just, I don't want to do a poor job. And, when you're responsible for mentoring someone too, it's a responsibility to do that well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's just about having the, you want to make sure that what is around is timed well. I didn't even know this particular award existed until this person approached me and said, I saw this, I want to nominate you, are you willing? And I've kind of gone, So I think I just have to tell them no, don't I?
Amanda, Christine, go for it.
That's the hardest thing about being an academic, is that actually working out when to say no to stuff, because FOMO is very real. But yeah, I think you've got to look after yourself first, Sue, and no award's going to be worth it if you've crushed yourself in hours of having to write the application. But yeah, definitely say, can we talk about it a little bit earlier next year? Right.
And knowing too that it exists and I can have access to this year's paperwork means that we can even start you know, as soon as my peak period's over, I can start mentoring them properly to write it next year.
Yeah, let's start planning. Yeah.
And I guess even if they don't offer it next year or they offer something different, you've got something to work from that's a foundation. Like you were saying, with each time you get a no, it still helps you sculpt that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you answered your own question pretty well there too, but it's good to have that kind of reassurance from other people who are thinking the same way. So that's great. Yeah.
I just wanted to answer my question with a different answer.
Like some kind of magical wand waving that can help you. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
It does require extra effort. That's the thing. And you have to decide. And then that's part of the strategic decision, not only in terms of, you know, is this the right time for me and is this the right award, but do I have time and is this a reasonable thing to ask myself to do at this moment? And if there's a chance to be able to apply for that award again, and now you've got it in your head and you know how that helps sort of ferment ideas over time, and that could be really helpful too. And yeah, how nice to have somebody who comes up and wants to nominate you. That has to feel good, great.
It's a great problem to have, isn't it?
I guess so too, yeah. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Thanks for the questions and comments. Lots of lovely affirmations here in the chat for all the good work that everybody's doing. Take on board that this is for you and it's for others, and we're happy to have further conversations with you if you'd like to. And go and have a nice afternoon. See you. Thank you so much.